Okay, I'm calling it. GamerGate's officially over. Faith it, you lost. Let it be known that you were brought down by your own misogyny and bigotry.
Hello friends and subscribers, and welcome back to another Quintessential Retrospective. The past three of these I focused on armed conflicts. The Iraq War, the South Ossetia War, and the NATO bombing of Yugoslavia. Episode 2 was about Kosovo's separation from Serbia itself, and Episode 1 was on Occupy Wall Street. All of these real-world events. So today we're going to be dealing with a topic that's distinct from the others, because for the first time in a long time, we are returning to internet territory, something I do in History of YouTube Sagas. In fact, this could have been History of YouTube Sagas, GamerGate, as YouTube did play a part in the events of GamerGate, although not exclusively. But let's introduce the topic. It was on this day 5 years ago, on August 27th, 2014, even though much of the events that led up to it happened as little over a week prior, but we'll get into that in due time. But since GamerGate and its lead-up is quite expansive, I actually won't be spending that much time discussing the events, but only briefly referring to them for context. But as for GamerGate itself, it was an online movement dedicated to the improvement of ethical standards in the gaming press. Like the other legacy media since its inception, the gaming press was rife with problems. But some people have been noticing this long before the inception of GamerGate. In his initial video that launched the movement, Jim, aka Mr. Medicare, who at the time went by the name The Internet Aristocrat, pointed out as early as 2011 and 2012. You had articles on popular mainstream gaming publications like Kotaku and Gamerangs, and Polygon, Rock Paper Shotgun talking about how toxic certain popular games are and how toxic most gamers are. But you can see one of the problems. The readers of these sites deserve better, and I don't mean sincere social justice crap either. When they come to Kotaku, they want to read about games, not be lectured to by a bunch of low-T soy boys with man buns, and pink-haired feminists about how sexist their favorite games are and how toxic they are as people, but ignoring the political side of how awful gaming journalism had became at that point. One of the worst non-political offenders was Game Informer. Once again, this was pointed out by a user named Razorfist. But he did point out that Game Informer never rates the shittiest games below a 5.5 out of 10. And the fact that the magazine is owned and sold by GameStop, one of the top video game retailers, at least in North America, should definitely raise some eyebrows. In fact, even before GamerGate, he also ran a series called The Downfall of Games Journalism, which highlighted some pretty important issues.
The first entry in a series of rants entitled The Downfall of Gaming Journalism, and as the title suggests, these will be dedicated to the vanishing credibility of what is a vanishing industry, video game journalism. When I first fired the opening salvos in my now 4-year crusade against the depraved and incestuous coven of self-interest that is modern gaming journalism all the way back in 2009, I was in fact one of the few voices in video reviewing who were even troubling themselves to expend the effort. IGN. IGN is a living, breathing contradiction, ostensibly and in the eyes of many gamers that are often depicted as the evil empire of gaming journalism. But look, on the one hand, they weren't shy from calling Final Fantasy XIV the putrescent turd it truly was, despite the obese advertising campaign Square Enix paid for on their site. But then they turn around and they give Ace Combat Assault Horizon one of the absolute worst arcade flight sims in existence, and far and away the worst game in the Ace Combat series, an appalling 7.5 out of 10, or they give Dragon Age 2, I think it was a nice shiny 8.5 out of 10. 8.9 out of 10 to Final Fantasy XIII, a near perfect 9 out of 10 for Star Wars The Old Republic, with an accompanying month filled with articles extolling the virtues of this thoroughly vanilla MMORPG. Oh, while coincidentally animated Old Republic banner advertisements swirl and pulsate in the margins of the fucking page. Perk an ear and turn your gaze to IGN's thoroughly unbiased coverage of the PlayStation 4, a system without a price point and without a launch date. In the weeks leading up to the PS4 launch event, there were as many as 7 PS4-related stories on a single page, and that was before we even had a date for the event. Conversely, it was recently revealed that Microsoft will be holding their own event. How many stories were Microsoft-related? 4. Over the course of 7 fucking pages. And no bias there. When it comes to Sony, IGN has generated more spin than a ballerina with vertigo, and as I'm sure a complete coincidence, there have been a glut of animated PS4 advertisements on IGN for at least the past week. Imagine that. This is a fucking abhorrent conflict of interest. This is the new face of gaming journalism, and this is IGN in a fucking nutshell.
But as for the events in question, I'm only going to give a brief summary of key events, unlike in my other videos, because a lot of significant stuff happened during GamerGate, because this went on for months. If you want a more detailed chronicle of the events, I have several links in the description, including a link to Mr. Medicare's entire series on the Quinnspiracy, which is the key lead up to what ultimately led to GamerGate. So what was Quinnspiracy? Well, earlier in August of 2014, Zoe Quinn got her point-and-click adventure Depression Quest released on Steam. But around that time, a blog post by a young man named Aaron Gajani went up called the Zoe Post. Aaron had previously been in a relationship with Zoe, but as displayed in the Zoe Post, it ended rather bitterly. The Zoe Post had detailed reasons why the relationship didn't work out for Aaron. Normally this wouldn't interest anybody, but in the Zoe Post, Aaron alleges that Zoe slept with several different men in order to advance her career within the indie gaming industry. It was later alleged she slept with 2 other men. The named men included Nathan Grayson, Robin Arnott, Joshua Boggs, Kyle Pulver, and Brandon McCartan. 2 of these men denied sleeping with her, and I believe later on it did turn out that it was true that they didn't. But now that's kind of beside the point. On August 19th, 2014, Mundane Matt released a video called Hell Hath No Fury Like a Lover Scorned, discussing the controversy about Depression Quest and Zoe Quinn regarding Aaron's post.
Hey everybody, my name is Mundane Matt, and you know, it's always fun to talk about video games. It truly is. It's even more fun to talk about the video game industry and the bullshit that permeates within it, right? It's always a blast. Don't you just love it? For how many times articles are written on Rock Paper Shotgun, Kotaku, any of those other sites, Destructoid, any of these other places that decry sexism in gaming and always tend to focus on the victiming of women who are in the spectrum of being games developers, we oftentimes have this disconnect of them as people, and we tend to put them on pedestals in one form or another. This has happened with Anita Sarkeesian and Zoe Quinn of Depression Quest fame. And so it's interesting when something comes out that is so damaging, so destructing, and so funny, in essence, that you just kind of have to talk about it. And what I'm talking about is a blog on WordPress called The Zoe Post, which will be linked in the low bar. And it was posted today by Aaron Joni, I think his name is. What he did is he documented and chronicled her infidelity against him. Number 1, spend quite a bit of time talking about how she would never ever cheat on anyone because that violates sexual consent, all while cheating on me. Number 2, with Nathan Grayson. 3, with Robin Arnott. 4, with Joshua Boggs. Number 5, who is both her boss and married. Number 6, and at least 2 others whose names are censored, and very probably more, but I won't get into why I believe that. 7, as opposed to informing Joshua's wife, primarily freak out about her own career if his wife goes public. 13, have no problem choosing to work for Joshua Boggs after cheating on me with him and after finding out about his wife. 14, spend an hour arguing that she would never lie in a relationship while she was lying about all the things in our relationship. What this tells us is there's a lot going on behind the scenes in the indie world of gaming right now. And in essence, it's incestuous. And we have to ask ourselves, based on the information that Aaron provided, how much of Zoe's coverage for Depression Quest lately has been from actual merits, she earned it, or people she was fucking to get it. And I know that's kind of a broad assumption, and he doesn't go outright and say that. He hints at it quite a bit, but it kind of makes sense.
Zoe herself then issued a fraudulent copyright infringement takedown of the video in order to try to cover up discussion of the controversy. Little did she know that she would spark the Streisand effect, and then later that night, Mr. Metokur, under his previous moniker, the Internet Aristocrat, uploaded his video discussing Zoe and her antics, not only surrounding Mundane Matt, but also in regards to her previous behavior in regards to the site WizardChan, and how she and an individual named Maya Kramer attacked the fine young capitalists over their dislike of the terms of a contest they set up trying to help young female indie game developers get their games published.
Sex for favors, secrets, cover-ups, corruption. I've heard things that'll blow your mind, and now I think it's time you get the whole story. I'm Jesse Ventura, and this is Quinnspiracy Theory.
The video I was originally going to upload tonight is gone. I've scrapped it, it's deleted. I've decided to do something different because of this. What you're looking at is a copyright claim against a YouTube user by the name of Mundane Matt on a video called Hell Hath No Fury Like a Lover Scorned. That copyright claim was filed by Zoe Quinn, the person who is the subject of the video itself. Now, in the copyright claim, she had stated that he'd used a still image of her game, Depression Quest, which she's a creator of, and that she had ownership over that, and that's why the video needed to be pulled down, because it was infringing on her intellectual property. But the truth is, it had nothing to do with that. The image Matt used in his video, and it was just one image. I want to show you his typical format. This is a typical video that Mundane Matt will put up. You have a still image in the background, you have a transparent barrier on the left-hand side with a title, and he talks over it. And that is exactly what Hell Hath No Fury was. It had a still image in the background, a transparent barrier, title, and he talked over it. Now, the image he used was a publicly available image. This game is out on Steam. You can see these images. They've been used in news articles, they've been posted on websites, they're publicly available through the company on Steam itself. So her copyright claim had nothing to do with him using her intellectual property. What it had to do with was suppressing information from getting out. And that's something that's been going on now for the last 3 days since this began. Sites like Reddit and NeoGAF and even 4chan on certain boards have suppressed this from being talked about because of the implications it has in the gaming industry. How did this game even get on Steam? Well, if you trace this back to its origins, when she was originally developing it, she started to get a lot of press because she was harassed. She was the victim of a sexist campaign by evil denizens of a website called WizardChan. Now, WizardChan, for those of you who are unfamiliar with this website, is a image board dedicated to the movie Hocus Pocus. They are Disney fucking fanatics over at WizardChan. But apparently, they have an issue. They have a major issue with Zoe Quinn and her game. And she went to Twitter, and she went to social media talking about how she's being persecuted and harassed. And what do you know? The gaming journalists, gaming press, jumped to her rescue. Now that sounds all fucking well and good, except it's completely untrue. And I can prove to you that it's untrue with the link in the description. Go check that out. It's an Imgur album, and it is a chronological explanation of why Zoe Quinn is full of shit and why this website WizardChan didn't target her. I'm going to read this verbatim, and I really want you to take in what she's saying, and then I'll focus on the really disgusting part of this. So, Silly Slater posts, "She fucking doxed me. We ran a group that literally said, any woman come up with an idea for a video game, we'll give you concept art so you can pitch your game, and we'll put all the pitches online. The internet will vote on the best one, and we'll make that game and give the profits to charity." She was like, "Why do you expect women to work for free to make games?" We said, well, they get 8% of the money as royalties, and they just have to give an idea. Other people will make the game, and the profits go to charity. Doesn't matter. It's oppressive. She started a fucking Twitter storm, crashed our website, got my personal information doxed, got us banned from Twitter. We email reporters what's up, and they're like, duh, if Zoe says it's oppressive, it must be true. Maybe you should give her money for Rebel Jam, which has no start date, location, or any other information, but totally isn't a scam. This happens at 3 other major publications.
Not long after the events would be set in motion, on Twitter, Phil Fish went on a bashing spree of anyone who mentioned Zoe Quinn in negative light, including Total Biscuit. He even then berated someone on Twitter who claimed that Zoe Quinn sexually harassed him at their wedding. Then around this time, the fine young capitalist released the soon-to-be mascot of GamerGate, Vivian James. As knowledge of the controversy began to grow, Suspiciously, within 24 hours, several gaming websites released 14 different, albeit strikingly similar articles proclaiming that gamers are dead and how there is a toxic environment among gamers that is harmful to women and non-whites. Discussion of the ongoing controversy was even outright banned on places like Reddit and 4chan. Finally, it was then on August 27th, Adam Baldwin, yes, that Adam Baldwin, on Twitter tweeted out weighing in on the controversy, coining the name of the movement GamerGate, and the rest is history. But then it does go on. In September of that year, GamerGate also saw the rise of Milo Yiannopoulos, who at the time was an associate editor at Breitbart News, who extensively covered GamerGate at this time. He would later uncover the gaming journal's pros list, that proved that there was indeed mailing lists of different indie gaming journalists who coordinate and push social justice and anti-gamer messages into their respective publications. And on that very subject, many people in retrospect consider GamerGate the point in which the culture war between the modern incarnation of social justice, with its postmodern and cultural Marxist foundations, and all of those who opposed it. While GamerGate became a rallying cry for those who wanted ethics in video games journalism, if you asked your typical supporter of the movement. Its critics, however, smeared, demonized, and dehumanized the movement as nothing more than a misogynistic harassment campaign against Zoe Quinn, Anita Sarkeesian, who initially had nothing to do with this whatsoever, but later injected herself into it, as well as a few others like Brianna Wu. They claimed GamerGate's true motive was to drive women from gaming, or some preposterous assertion of the such. As noted, GamerGate was a hashtag anybody could use, and that includes third-party trolls whom I suspect is responsible for most of the harassment against both sides, as well as bad actors, bots, and what I also suspect, black propaganda accounts set up by GamerGate critics themselves. And if GamerGate was a harassment movement that exclusively targeted women, then some anti-GamerGate fuckwit is going to have to explain to us that on the official boycott list here, that there are 50 male individuals named and less than 20 women named. In response to the corrupt gaming journalists being outed for their shitty antics, then using harassment and misogyny by a hate mob as a cover, the Not Your Shield hashtag was created by the countless women and non-whites who also supported GamerGate. It's also worth noting that one of the strongest publications to come out in support of GamerGate was Niche Gamer, a gaming review site that at the time, and probably still to this very day, caters to niches within the gaming community such as trans people and minorities. That, and the fact that Vivian James, the mascot of GamerGate, came into being as a result of pro-GamerGate supporters on 4chan giving generous sums of money to the fine young capitalists who are self-described radical feminists. So yes, you had GamerGate supporters giving money to an organization that is pro-feminist and very pro-woman. So the misogyny credentials, I don't think are exactly there. Now, the idea of the culture war beginning on the internet is unprecedented. And although being demonized as particularly right-wing, a sample of GamerGate supporters was taken on their political compass test that showed that yes, while there were a significant amount of right-wingers who supported GamerGate, your typical GamerGate supporter was a left-leaning libertarian. Not to mention some of GamerGate's most prominent supporters were left-wing, such as Mundane Matt, Sargon of Akkad, Thunderfoot, The Amazing Atheists, and others. But even today, on fucking Wikipedia, they have GamerGate listed not only as a right-wing phenomena, but they actually list GamerGate as an event on the timeline of the alt-right. The alt-right. The Wikipedia article itself is full of lies about GamerGate, as most of its sources, while on credible websites, are mostly opinion pieces from GamerGate critics who are far from impartial. But seriously, the alt-right? Am I alone in not remembering any prominent alt-right personalities like Richard Spencer or Jared Taylor saying anything about GamerGate? I mean, Milo at one point considered himself alt-right back around 2016, but that was before the term exclusively applied to right-leaning white nationalists and white supremacists. Milo, being a gay Jewish man who likes interracial gay sex, has no place in the alt-right, if you ask your typical alt-righter. The truth is, GamerGate was mostly a movement with left-leaning individuals, But again, its motives were not political, so that's kind of irrelevant. But it did have a fair bit of diverse supporters, as seen here.
I support GamerGate because I do not deserve to be labeled as a cis white male misogynist or terrorist because denizens of the internet uncovered the lack of integrity regarding few gaming journalists.
GamerGate, because the correct response to being accused of corruption is strawmanning your opponent and insulting them.
Hi, my name's Timothy. I'm an independent publisher and a bisexual male. I'm not your shield against corruption and censorship.
I am a queer feminist woman, and I am not the shield for false ally gaming journalists to hide their corruption behind. I support GamerGate and we call you out.
Hello, I'm a minority and I support GamerGate and I'm not your shield, SJW.
Hi, my name's Bernard Williams and I support GamerGate because of the reason that I am a gamer myself and I am also black. And these people think that they know what offends me and what doesn't.
I support Not Your Shield and GamerGate because I take the offenses in games and turn into passion for making new games, and because I want transparency in gaming journalism to better judge games being reported on by gaming websites.
But back to the gaming journal's pros, and various publications publishing smear pieces daily about GamerGate. Supporters decided to coordinate a boycott of these various publications, pushing these pieces. And contrary to another lie that you can find on the Wikipedia page, GamerGate also decided to target bigger name publishers like IGN, PC Gamer, and Xbox Magazine. However, it is true the biggest target that GamerGate sought to bring down was Gawker Media, who owned Kotaku and others. GamerGate successfully dissuaded many of these advertisers on these sites to disassociate from them, which leads to where GamerGate eventually did manage to pull off some significant success. By November 2014, it was reported that GamerGate had cost Gawker 7 figures in ad revenue, so at least $1 million at the bare minimum. However, it was also at this time that GamerGate's own founder, arguably, Jim, the internet aristocrat, rage quit and decided to leave the internet for the time being. Many people noticed that around this time, Jim's content creation had been sporadic, and he had been more active elsewhere, such as the poll forums on 4chan. He then released his final message to GamerGate. In it, Jim says he decided to quit GamerGate because he saw it as softening itself too much. Rather than give social justice one swift killing blow, most GamerGate supporters were content to let them remain so long as they merely improved their behavior and ethics. Jim also became disillusioned with other people cynically using GamerGate as a means to grow their own popularity. Here are some excerpts from his final message.
So realistically, I'm done. The channel's shut down. I'll pop up maybe in 6 or 7 months. None of you are going to remember what I sound like. You're probably not going to find the channel. That's just how I'd prefer it. I didn't like a large audience. And to be frank with you, the whole GamerGate thing is depressing. It was the opportunity to finally kick the teeth in of social justice warriors and Tumblrettes and draw a fucking line in the sand and push back against all these hypersensitive cunts. And for a while it was working really, really well. All you had to do was attack. See, that's the trick. That's why I love polls so fucking much. People think you need to be a moderate or an independent or a neutral. They're wrong. You need to pick an extreme. You need to pick a side with a yes or a no answer. That's how you attract people to you. If you're too focused on being a moderate, if you try to approach the middle to appeal to moderates, you become indistinguishable from them, and your message becomes diluted. And as time went on, that's what happened to GamerGate. And it's too fucking painful to watch happen anymore. I was planning on shutting down the channel anyway, but over the last month, I watched this happen more and more. Don't believe me? Go look at this for yourself, Bull. Go look at the people who are prominent figures right now in Gamergate, and see how many of them have Indiegogo campaigns, how many of them have Kickstarter campaigns, how many of them have Patreons, how many are have ad revenue on their fucking videos. Everybody's making a buck, and they're all making a buck doing the same shit the people we were supposed to be fighting against were doing. They're crying harassment and then making money off of it, and it's fucking bullshit. You had to do just one thing: attack, attack, attack. Keep the pressure up, and your opponent, in this case corrupt media and the SJW cultural Marxist bullshit, they'll fold. They'll make a mistake and make themselves look stupid, like Sam Biddle did, like other people did. And you capitalize off of that. The saddest fucking thing about all of this is, it wasn't mainstream media, it wasn't multi-million-dollar corporations, it wasn't corrupt journalists, and it wasn't social justice warriors that killed Gamergate. Gamergate shot itself in the foot by becoming what they're fighting. And that is just too much to fucking handle. It's just, I couldn't watch it happen anymore. They don't know what they're doing. When you lose your edge, when you lose that chaotic element that really helps you boost something in the beginning, you're dead in the water. And that's exactly what's happening to Gamergate. I wish them the best. I don't want to see Gawker win. I don't want to see those fuckers, those smug cunts, walk away like nothing happened. But it feels hopeless. It really does.
Despite Jim leaving the movement, Gamergate still managed to keep going strong, and even the SJW elites in regular media caught wind of Gamergate, and they had their opportunity to further demonize the movement. In February of 2015, Law & Order SVU aired an episode entitled The Intimidation Game, a sensationalist reefer madness caliber anti-Gamergate propaganda episode where an Indian Anita Sarkeesian type character is kidnapped, raped, and beaten by a bunch of ISIS-esque white male gamers who hate her and hate women and want them out of their games or something. This is a callback to when some people on Twitter refer to gamers and Gamergate supporters as worse than ISIS. What's ironic is after the episode aired, although Ice-T did defend Law & Order's approach to the episode, he also did stick up for gamers against the press.
In the gaming community, there was a thing called Gamergate, which was a big controversy that went on about sexism and different things that were going on in gaming. Okay, the TV show Law & Order kind of did something based around it, but they twisted it. And a lot of people in the gaming community got kind of upset, and they were like, well, Ice, you're a gamer. You should have stood up for it. Thing of it is I play games. I'm not really connected to the politics that's going on. I don't read gaming magazines and stuff like that. So I had to explain to the gaming community, and I also had to give them a little pep talk and saying, hey, don't worry about the press. Press is always going to attack you. That's just part of the game. You know, if there's an apology to be made, I have no problem making an apology. I wasn't aware that there was something this serious going on in gaming that I should have been aware of as a gamer, but that's neither here nor there. Gamers,
you're not the director.
Just do your shit. I play the most violent games out there. I've been dealing with fucking critics my whole fucking life. I've made some of the craziest records. You just got to do you. No matter how hard it is to somebody else, it ain't hard enough. And when people they want to attack you, they'll try to attack you using alternate tactics. Oh, the reason these games aren't good is because it's bad for kids. They just don't like you, so they use this tactic to get attention. They'll throw some bullshit into it that's not even true. And what I think they did when they attacked the gamers, they said, oh, it's sexist and they don't want girls. I don't even know what it's about, but fuck the press. Fuck the press. Anybody who's ever been successful has to get past the press. To me, the press are the spectators. The press is going to spin the story. They don't want to just tell the story. They got to spin it to create controversy. They can get me and you fighting. That's a good story. You know, they're just in it for the bullshit and the gossip. Don't you remember the days they used to just tell the news?
A far more notable person who went from anti-Gamergate to pro-Gamergate was Ian Miles Chong of GamerGate. Chong used to be your typical SJW type and typical GamerGate critic. And of course, he was named on GamerGate's boycott list. However, in May 2015, he apologized to gamers and admitted he took part in a vicious campaign of dehumanization against them. Even before this, there were signs that he may be softening his stance. He once famously asked his then fellow SJWs if they ever get tired of being outraged all the time. It wasn't long before he got excommunicated by the SJWs for committing the unpardonable sin of recognizing the humanity of their political opponents. Towards the end of 2015, GamerGate started to die down a bit, but the movement still achieved some notable victories. The first being the previously mentioned 7-figure loss in ad revenue to Gawker, so at least $1 million. Another GamerGate victory claimed was eventually that most of the targeted websites and publications, such as IGN, did end up updating their code of ethics. Then perhaps its biggest victory was indeed a major blow and shake-up to the SJW establishment and their positions of influence. Never before did a mass movement, even if it was largely based on the internet, form in opposition to their establishment and cause significant damage to it. This leads to the "where are they now" of the prominent figures of GamerGate and the movement's legacy, 5 years later on. To the SJWs, they remember GamerGate as well as we do, for the reasons I just mentioned. It's also worth mentioning that GamerGate was not the first movement in my lifetime to be demonized as just a bunch of haters. So while the smears against GamerGates were a wake-up call and new to some, it was nothing new to others such as myself. 5 years prior to GamerGate, in 2009, we had the Tea Party protests here in the United States, a countrywide series of protests against excessive taxation, the bailouts, and the later proposed and adopted Affordable Care Act. However, the movement was demonized by the left as a bunch of angry old racists who were mad that America had just elected its first black president, Barack Obama. Just like how GamerGate was demonized as just a bunch of misogynists who hated the idea of women making video games or some horse shit like that. As the years would go on, the SJWs and the far left would often refer back to the movement in negative lights, such as claiming Trump is the candidate of GamerGate. And even as recently as earlier this month, I found an article trying to claim the El Paso mass shooter was a result of GamerGate, even though he doesn't mention the movement at all in his manifesto, just Call of Duty in the context of encouraging other potential shooters not to be foolhardy in going after potentially high protected targets, living out their Call of Duty fantasies. It's fucking hysterical. As one of my friends mentioned, the SJWs will never forget GamerGate. So how about the movement itself? Well, the last time I was on Facebook, which was a while ago, there are still many active GamerGate groups, one of whom I was a part of, that still shared information and monitored the gaming press. It also took part in fun stuff like ordinary game discussion and stuff like that. And it's also worth mentioning the group was originally led by a male-to-female trans individual, but left after many GamerGate supporters started to form a cult of personality around Milo Yiannopoulos. But elsewhere, the YouTube channel Humanity Forever still makes videos and streams discussing the movement at length, and recently even wrote a book about the movement. I have not read or purchased the book yet as of the time of the making of this video, but I intend to. And I encourage those who are curious and want to know more to buy a copy. Much like how the CIA and Soros-backed bulldozer revolution that ousted Yugoslav President Slobodan Milosevic in 2000 served as a blueprint for other revolutions such as the Rose Revolution in Georgia in 2003 and Orange Revolution in Ukraine in 2004, GamerGate served as a blueprint for future internet-based gate controversies. In the same year as GamerGate, in late November, early December 2014, leftist metal review rags such as Metal Injection and Metal Sucks released articles claiming the problem with heavy metal is metalheads, trying to inject their cancerous SJWisms into the metal fan base by bashing the usual stuff. It's too white and too toxic because it's male. The backlash to this became known as Metalgate. More recently, however, GamerGate served as the blueprint for Comicsgate, which grew as a result of SJWs turning even respected comic brands like Marvel and DC into their own propaganda rags with subtle as a tank driving into your house political messages. Once again, the SJW establishment has smeared Comicsgate with the usual cartoonish caricatures, And again, on fucking Wikipedia, oh, it's an alt-right movement that aims to harass women and POC comic writers. Even though it's not. It also served as the blueprint for AnimeGate, which was the backlash against Funimation and many prominent voice actors and voice actresses turning their backs on Vic Mignogna after bogus sexual harassment allegations. Back to Gamergate and many of the publications that sided with Gamergate, many still live up to its values. Niche Gamer still from time to time publishes articles monitoring the unethical behavior of other gaming publications. And one site that kept tabs on many anti-Gamergate activists, so-called journalists, was One Angry Gamer. In late 2017, in the wake of the whole Harvey Weinstein scandal and the birth of #MeToo, it was revealed that many prominent anti-Gamergate writers did in fact previously engage in various forms of sexual misconduct. One Angry Gamer documented such individuals, including Sam Criss, Matt Hickey, Christopher Goldberg, Anthony White, and Devin Faraci. Faraci is even mentioned on the boycott list. One Angry Gamer also documented that aside from individuals, many of the anti-Gamergate publications such as Vice harbored a culture of sexual harassment. Earlier this month, it was uncovered that one of Gamergate's most prolific critics, Arthur Chu, was in fact a wife-beater who had a restraining order taken out against him before the divorce. Wow. But it was also in the same month that Billy D, who runs One Angry Gamer, jumped the shark himself, going on a long-winded rant which included calling people low IQ and pretty liberal use of certain racial epithets. Damn. But he's not the only Gamergate supported to sink in terms of character. Billy also pointed out and documented that Jonathan Warden, a prominent supporter, was convicted of possessing CP and posed as a young teenage lesbian online. So, how about some other central figures? Well, despite ceasing to be irrelevant by the time the movement came about, Zoe Quinn got the VIP treatment among institutions where the left has power, and even spoke at the friggin' UN alongside Anita Sarkeesian in demanding broadening the definition of online harassment and calling for UN-sanctioned internet censorship. 2 years ago, she herself published a book detailing her side of the story, particular emphasis on the words her and story. Despite glowing reviews from SJWs and feminists, the book didn't exactly sell well, and a review that was at least tried to be fair, it was pointed out it became apparent in the writing that Zoe shows some awareness that she has engaged in some shitty behavior as a person, and displays some signs of some form of mental illness, showing the book frequently goes from 0 to 100, a lot. It also speculates many of the harassment she claims to suffer from may be imagined rather than outright fabricated. Then there is Gawker Media, who although lost at least $1 million in ad revenue thanks to Gamergate, the franchise was ultimately brought down in the unrelated lawsuit by professional wrestler Hulk Hogan for leaking his sex tape. After the lawsuit, Gawker was subsequently purchased by Univision, but even they could not breathe life back into Gawker as of 2019. So how about some of the others on the Gamergate side? Well, let's begin with Mundane Matt. Well, in a turn of fate, nearly 4 years after the fact, Matt Jarbo engaged in the exact same antics that Zoe Quinn did to him. For a while, Matt was a frequent target of ridicule by Dame Pesos, who ran the Soyless Matt show. Like Quinn, Matt didn't take too kindly to people making fun of him on the internet, and filed several fraudulent DMCA takedowns against Dame Pesos. For the longest time, he denied this, and even denied knowing who Dame Pesos was, but then, when brought onto the Ralph Report to finally get to the bottom of the controversy, his YouTube report history was made available for all to see, and it was in fact him who did it, and then lied about it.
All right, here we go. Screen share's live. Let's see it.
All right, hold on. My pants are off.
Oh, Jesus Christ. All right.
Matt,
fine.
what are you doing? How's it taking this long?
Look at all those tabs!
I have a lot of tabs open, but I have...
Thanks for reporting!
That one... But nothing on...
Now, wait a minute!
Nothing on that. That's just...
What the fuck?
So... I have been in a not the best place mentally. And...
Now, wait a minute, Matt! No! Matt, no!
So, yeah, That's
wait,
it.
No,
That's-
no,
Wait a minute. Cut back. No.
He fucking lied to us. He
No,
lied to us.
dude,
No,
what?
Straight to our face. He lied straight to our fucking face.
For an hour.
He was spitting and deflecting the entire fucking
No.
Way to go, Matt. Then there is Carl Benjamin. Carl Benjamin, aka Sargon of Akkad, became a leading GamerGate figure by the beginning of 2015. He since then, for a while, became arguably the most popular anti-SJW content creator, and arguably still is. Although since 2016, he became a polarizing figure within the general anti-SJW crowd, with many of his left-wing fans deserting him for backing Trump, and many of his right-leaning fans deserting him for being too center-left. He also came up with a rather bold and unrealistic idea.
You ready?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, we are.
Yeah. I reckon we can get Donald Trump to defend Gamergate.
As much as I would love for that to happen, but let's be real, Carl, that's pretty far-fetched. You're more likely to see Trump pose with a selfie with AOC than tweet about Gamergate. He's a 73-year-old boomer politician who doesn't know jack shit about video games, let alone knowing that the gaming press is a thing. And as President of the United States, why would he be bothered to learn and tweet about something that happened on the internet 5 years ago and doesn't even have the slightest significance to contemporary American affairs? Anyway, in the summer of 2018, he and Count Dankula joined UKIP and ran for the European parliamentary elections earlier this spring, and it turned out to be a shit show. And lastly, there is Jim, the internet aristocrat himself. After leaving the internet in late 2014, he eventually came back close to the summer of 2015 under a new moniker, Mr. Medicare. In somewhat of a subtly contrarian fashion, because anti-SJW content imploded in 2015, mostly thanks to him even before Gamergate with his Tumblerism and Hugbox Chronicle series, he moved on into making videos about different subjects, ranging from degenerate shit on DeviantArt to, well, pretty much degenerate shit in general, but he's still around making content from time to time. He has also since had a falling out with Matt Jarrow and Sargon. Matt for his hypocritical antics, and Sargon for, well, thinking more highly of himself than he should have. And with that, we have seen how and why Gamergate came to be, its end results, and where it has gone since then. The gaming press still has its issues, so many argue Gamergate should be revived again, and perhaps it should. But that is all I have to say about Gamergate for this video. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'm sure many of you were around when Gamergate broke out, so what recollections do you have of the movement? Until then, I am the Black Lord of Fenrir. More content will be coming soon. Glory to gamers, and long live #Gamergate.